If you have a problem, like you're living in an authoritarian system that wants to censor you and seems to be implementing some peculiar measures to prevent any kind of uprising or consensus or movement of opposition, if you want some help and if you can find us, maybe you can join the Stay Free movement. I can't even tell you where we're going, but have a look at this set. I think there are indications of where you might find us and where you might find free speech and where you might find a conversation with Dr. Peter McCullough, who I'm going to be speaking to right now. Peter, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. Sorry for keeping you waiting.
Thanks for having me.
Peter, can you tell us about the recent study that suggests there's a potential link between the mRNA COVID-19 vaccines and sudden cardiac deaths? And can I just check we're off YouTube before Peter answers that? Fantastic. So can you tell us about this new study?
Sure. I think this is a little too strong for YouTube. So the science here is very disturbing. Schreckenberg and colleagues from Germany showed that when Pfizer and Moderna is directly applied to heart muscle cells, they start to have very abnormal function and electrical currents within about 48 hours. I mean, this is an evidence of direct cardiac toxicity. Separately, Crossan and colleagues from Harvard showed the messenger RNA is physically stuck in the human heart in people who are dying after the vaccine. And now Nakahara and colleagues in a big study, 700 people took the vaccine, 300 who didn't. Their cardiac PET scans or positron emission tomography heart scans are very abnormal in those who took the vaccine. There's a shift towards the abnormal uptake of what's called fluorodeoxyglucose in positron emission tomography. This is basically a sick heart pattern on PET scanning. And the astonishing finding was that virtually everybody who took the shot has an abnormal cardiac PET scan, those with sore arms, as a sign of inflammation or potentially even potential dose of messenger RNA, have worsened cardiac findings. So what we've learned now is that it's possible to actually have cardiac dysfunction, maybe even a cardiac arrest, without myocarditis.
Peter, that sounds terrifying and so beyond the official and heavily propagated narrative that it was impossible to gainsay for such a long time that it's difficult for me to accept, primed, even though I've been with all manner of complex and contrary information over the last year. Does this represent a significant shift? How do you think this will be publicly addressed? And does this amount to a yet more significant failure of the vaccine itself and the surrounding cultural paraphernalia? Are we now at the point where we have to acknowledge that vaccine has caused more harm than good, taken broadly?
Information's converging for sure. I've led the largest autopsy study now. Over 300 autopsies. People have died after the vaccine. We've extracted all the data from the individual case reports, individually adjudicated all of them, and determined that 73.9% of all the deaths that are occurring, assessed by autopsy after the vaccine, in fact, the vaccine has caused the death. When we believe it's a cardiac abnormality in a separate paper, first authors Holscher and colleagues, 100% are actually due to the vaccine. So what we've found is the COVID-19 vaccine is the clear cause of cardiac arrest and sudden death in people who have no obvious other explanation. This is very important. Normally when someone dies, the cause is known heart disease or known cancer or other problems like a motor vehicle accident, homicide, suicide, drug overdose, but very rarely is death ever a mystery. So these cases that are reporting in death, no obvious cause, now the first thing we think of is, did they take a COVID-19 vaccine?
Yes, in fact, it's true, isn't it, that Edward Dowd's information, it attests that 60,000 young people died from causes unknown. The cause was not COVID, and as he phrases it, there was over the 12-year period of the Vietnam War, 60,000 American young people died, and that many people have died, presumably, I suppose, in the manner that you've described. Is that are you saying that when we were all culturally and anecdotally experiencing athletes or famous people or young people elsewhere dying, that this is what was behind it scientifically? This is the explanation.
Yeah, that's what we're piecing together. What Dowd has done is he's made the case that all-cause mortality is rising across data systems. Our Center for National Health Statistics in the United States has reported in a report by Hoyert, disturbingly, that maternal mortality, women who are pregnant and then 42 days after delivery, maternal mortality is at an all-time high since the 1960s, and that was for the 2021 calendar year. Now the CDC reported just a few days ago that infant mortality has started to turn upwards. This is the first upward turn we've seen in 20 years. So from adults, pregnant women, infants, none of it looks good. Public health officials should be having an all hands on deck investigation to why mortality is going up. The only new thing introduced now is the COVID-19 mass vaccination program.
That's terrifying. It seems that the way that the information is being released is incrementally, like you'll hear that, oh yeah, it does cause myocarditis in this demographic. Oh, there are traces to be found in the milk of breastfeeding mothers. And then you start to realize that there's an increase in infant mortality. And then perhaps you'll learn that miscarriages increased. Peter, perhaps this is beyond even your vast wheelhouse, but it doesn't seem to me likely that such an extraordinary error could have occurred without, I don't know, how could something of this scale have happened when there are meant to be so many agencies, both national and global and international, that are meant to be safeguarding, regulating and examining and preventing a travesty of this scale taking place?
I was the only person in the public view in August of 2020. On August 17th in 2020, I published In the Hill, which is a widely read journal for the House, the Senate, White House, people in Washington, people all over the country. The title of the op-ed was The Great Gamble of the COVID-19 Vaccine Program. You know, I was the only public figure and the only person in academic medicine to question these COVID-19 vaccines. Everybody had basically fallen into a trance of thinking the vaccines were going to save the world, that they were, presumed to be safe and effective. The reason why they should be questioned from the very beginning is the vaccines are the genetic code for the spike protein. The spike protein is the spine on the surface of the virus. It's the lethal part of SARS-CoV-2. So the genetic code, which we have no ability to shut off, was injected into people's bodies. And once the genetic code started to produce the spike protein, in some people, it was going to be too much for too long, and it was going to be fatal. Now we've learned in a paper by Brogna and colleagues that the vaccine spike protein is circulating in the bloodstream for 6 months or longer after people take these shots. I can tell you, having a foreign protein whose genetic code and engineering occurred in a Chinese biosecurity lab, floating around in the bloodstream of billions of people who took the vaccine. This is a reality now that's mind-blowing. As a doctor, I can't possibly even conceive this happened. And now we're seeing disasters, including the tsunami of cardiac arrests, blood clots, strokes, immunologic problems, and now even signals that cancer is on the way up.
Wow. Thank you for your extraordinary bravery right at the advent. I suppose to you it felt like duty. How were you treated at the commencement of this pandemic period when you were making these proclamations, offering a counter narrative and indeed information vitally to back up your perspective? How do you feel you were treated by the scientific community and their partners in media, Peter?
I put it all in a book called Courage to Face COVID-19, which is a 5-star bestseller on Amazon. And, interestingly, even that book just suffered about 2 weeks of censorship on Amazon. It's when our book joined just a half dozen books that was banned from Amazon, including one by Adolf Hitler, for no reason. They said our book had offensive content. We appealed multiple times. It took a lot of public pressure. Now our book is restored. Courage to Face COVID-19 is back on Amazon. But I put it all in the book because it was such an extraordinary story. I wasn't just being a critic or a skeptic. I was offering solutions. I had basically devised the first early treatment protocol for COVID-19, had it published in a very high-level journal, the American Journal of Medicine. It became the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons Home Treatment Guide. I testified in the U.S. Senate very early in November 19th of 2020 that we had a solution to treat patients and prevent complications. By December of 2020, I kept working in the medical literature. We had clear and convincing evidence that early treatment worked. What I was shocked with is that my junior colleagues didn't follow along, that they didn't step in and help people get through the illness all over the world. It was astonishing. So at this point in time, what I've experienced is not a warm welcome, but in fact, just a vehement wave of antipathy. And it's come from the American Board of Internal Medicine, as well as, general pundits out there. Now, I've never had somebody of my stature, like a chief of medicine, a dean, division chief, ever face me face to face and tell me they disagree with the principles of early treatment or the issues of vaccine safety. Never. And when I've testified 3 times in the U.S. Senate, we've invited ahead of time with plenty of advance notice Anthony Fauci, Rochelle Lewinsky, Ashish Jha, Murthy, all the public health officials. None of them have showed up to face me or people in my circles.
That's terrifying. A vehement wave of antipathy, you say. Your book was banned from Amazon. Your protocols that were demonstrably effective were not only not taken up, but in some cases discredited. And now that only 3% of Americans are taking the most recent COVID booster, it seems that generally speaking, the mistrust of the vaccines has reached a tipping point. I wonder what you think about the story that Anthony Fauci was supporting a project that was collaborating with the Wuhan virus some months or even years prior to this outbreak, or that taken in conjunction with how long it's taking the truth to be broadly conveyed or even discussed, the obvious and evident censorship that took place during the pandemic, the challenges you've just described with both the book that you've published and your protocols. What do you feel that suggests?
It suggests that the U.S., as well as many other Western countries, were deep into biological threat development. Paper by Lalani and colleagues, British Medical Journal, indicates the United States has been in messenger RNA development since 1985. It's put tens of billions of dollars into this. DARPA, our research unit of the military, in 2012, it's still on their website, has a program. It's called the ADEPT P3 program. It has the aspiration of ending pandemics in 60 days using messenger RNA. Now, a paper by Lee and colleagues indicate there's over 9,000 patents on messenger RNA. So no single person invented it. Obviously, 9,000 patents. The lead patent assignees are Sanofi, CureVac, BioNTech, Moderna, and the U.S. government. So the U.S. is deeply involved in this. Fauci and his division at the NIH worked with Ralph Barrick at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Peter Daszak at the EcoHealth Alliance, Dr. Xingling Li at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and they actually created this chimeric virus. They published it in 2015 and 2016. Nature Medicine and Proceedings of the National Academy of Science. They basically showed the world they created SARS-CoV-2 in 2016, and it gets out of the lab in 2019. Now all this is coming out in the U.S. House of Representatives Select Committee for Coronavirus Investigation led by Dr. Bren Wenstrup. So Fauci is deeply involved in the creation of SARS-CoV-2 and in the cover-up where he pretends as if this came out of nature and it coordinated a deceptive program to mislead the world.
I was about to sort of say, will there ever be a kind of reckoning now that it seems that there is sufficient evidence to warrant one? And whilst you yourself have participated in Senate hearings, and here in our country there is a kind of rather gentle partisan inquiry into COVID that will likely lead to the conclusion that but one half of our political system ought be damned in favour of the other, all too similar half. It seems that the scale of the reckoning that is required is such that it would amount to a dismantling of such powerful institutions and economic interests, a kind of unravelling of deep relationships between the media, big pharma and the state, that the system itself will be challenged. Therefore, Peter, it seems unlikely that that reckoning can ever take place, particularly given that few, if any, lessons appear to have been learned from this period. I don't mean from there are now cultural groups that will never trust the government again, never trust the media again, but because there is a doubling down on the crushing of dissent and escalation of censorship, and even sort of attempts by the FDA to shut down over-the-counter drugs and measures that amount to trying to create further tyranny and dominion over the pharmaceutical solutions to relatively ordinary or common viruses like colds and flus. It suggests that this agenda is continuing. So do you feel that there will ever be a reckoning? And do you feel that the agenda that brought us the pandemic and its problems is still at work?
I think you summarized it very well. In my book, we call it a biopharmaceutical complex, a powerful syndicate with non-governmental organizations, governmental regulatory agencies. They're all working together. The one thing that's clear about the complex, you know what they want? A single solution for every problem, and that's a vaccine. It's a vaccine-only strategy, and it's working to try to reduce medicinal opportunities for people. It's clearly undermined all our efforts on early treatment, from nasal sprays and gargles to over-the-counter vitamins, supplements, other things we can use to treat illness. It's clearly a plan. And the best plan to read is actually the business plan by CEPI, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness and Innovation. And that was put together by Gates Foundation and the World Economic Forum in 2017. CEPI says there will be a wave of pandemics, and there will be only one solution each time, and that is a vaccine. We've already had two of them now. We've had SARS-CoV-2, and don't forget monkeypox. The World Health Organization declared monkeypox a worldwide emergency. Get ready for another one. I don't think people are going to fall for it. People didn't fall for monkeypox, and they're going to start to follow people who they can trust, who are bringing solutions, and that is prevention and treatment of these illnesses as opposed to a vaccine.
COVID was very much the Beatles. Monkeypox was the monkeys. It was a poor imitation. It's never going to take off. Do you know monkeypox didn't even write its own mRNA? It had it written elsewhere. Hey, Dr. Peter, I'm sort of terrified by all of this. How is it possible for you to keep your head in these spaces with your evident and obvious scientific understanding and enormous integrity and not fall into total despair? How is it possible for you to be able to identify figures like Bill Gates, who are still deified in certain portions of the media and presented as kind of liberal titans and heroes before whom we ought hurl ourselves down in worship, in front of in worship? How are you coping with this, and how do we deal with the fact that so many things that were regarded as conspiracies? I still remember the talk shows where people were singing Anthony Fauci's name and wearing T-shirts and pencil cases and badges like he was the anti-Trump and that he was some kind of a science messiah. In fact, messianically, he declared, Christ-like, that he was science, that he was the epitome, that the only way to science is through me, like a latter-day secular pharmacological Christ. How are you coping with this, Peter? And how are we going to freely convey this information to enough people to generate the kind of uprising that such disturbing truths would seemingly warrant?
You know, I was over in the UK in September, and your picture was all over the tabloids. And so I can tell you, Russell, I must be like you, that we're bold and relentless. We know that the truth will prevail. The truth is far more powerful than the false narrative. We're not conspiracy theorists. We're rational theorists, meaning we're interpreting what's going on, and we have a rational approach to our understanding. We can debate and talk about these issues. We know the other side, this biopharmaceutical complex, they cannot have any face-to-face discussion on any of this. Early treatment of COVID, vaccine safety and efficacy, the false declaration of a monkeypox emergency. And we can continue to find this. They seem to believe that by manipulation of people through the major media and through social media, that they can actually change human thought. And we know this because there's a very important case. It's called Missouri versus Biden. And the US government is knee deep in manipulating human thought through social media. And the Biden administration is fighting desperately to continue to have government agents turning the levers in social media. Australia, the same thing. Australia is going to have the first of this year a very draconian new law go into place where people will not be able to challenge the government false narrative in social media in Australia. Rumble is, by the way, not available in France right now. So we can see this going on all over. It's a global totalitarian takeover. The only way we will prevail is to continue to bring people the truth. And you know what? They gravitate to us because they know we're on the right side of history.
Yes, I pray to God that you are right. A lot of people are pointing out that Fauci could be a literal antichrist and pointing out that they love Jesus Christ. Well, and I share that love with you, and I certainly share concerns about some sort of anti-rapture going on in the world of big pharma. But Peter, surely this hysteria is unwarranted. It's not like the WHO are putting together a treaty that means that they will be able to bypass national sovereignty in the event of another pandemic, and that this treaty is so caroming and open that even climate change under its auspices could be regarded as a kind of pandemic. Is it, Peter?
Yes, it's all true. The WHO aspires to have complete dominion over all plants, animals, and humans, with authority binding by international law to declare pandemics, to declare emergency countermeasures, to have lockdowns, forced vaccinations, all of it, and to influence our livestock, farming, management of energy. It's a giant overreach, and people are opposing this. I testified in the European Parliament on September 13th, 2023, and I told the EU, pull out of the WHO. Trump's instincts were right. Pull out of the WHO. He says if he gets back in the office, that's going to be job one. Pull the U.S. out. We don't want to get tied up in international court. As a doctor, Russell, I'm not going to follow anything the WHO says. I'm going to follow my medical judgment and do the right thing for patients.
This seems to be the kind of solution that more people should be pursuing. Individual freedom, community freedom, an end to these peculiar international global Goliaths that seek to impose new legislation and order on free individuals and formerly free nations. Peter, I want to thank you so much for joining us, and I want to thank you for your great work and your bravery at a time when many people were afraid to speak out. You kind of did so automatically, and it had great impact, and the truth has borne out. And thank you for your great work. It's a real honor and privilege to meet you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Follow me on my website, petermcculloughmd.com.
We're going to post the link in the description, petermcculloughmd.com. Also, Peter is on Substack, and if you want to be ahead of where things are apparently even now gravitating, then Dr. Peter McCullough is one of the voices that you should be listening to and one of the men you should be following. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.